On November 22nd, 1963, the 35th President of the United States was assassinated in Dallas, Texas. Ever since, there has been much speculation about the people who were responsible for President Kennedy's assassination, with various hypotheses of conspiracy theorists versus the Warren report that simply said, hey, a lone man, a crazy communist, killed the president. One of the most interesting aspects, that's a medical one, was the autopsy, the post-mortem exam of President Kennedy. It was done at Bethesda Naval Hospital by very competent Navy physicians, headed by Dr. James Humes, under the supervision of Dr. Burkley, then the chief White House physician. When we examine the autopsy of the President Kennedy, it's impossible not to notice certain flaws that would make anybody who concerns about medicine nervous and lose confidence. What are they? There are at least 3 indications that this was not a good, solid, scientifically valid autopsy. Number 1, according to the Warren report and according to the autopsy signed by Admiral Burkley and also Commander Humes, President Kennedy's brain did weigh 1,500 grams, an impossibility in view of the fact that President's brain, half of it was gone because of the violent head trauma he suffered. A second and really unforgivable flaw for the presidential autopsy was the fact that some of the autopsy records, according to Dr. Humes and according to Dr. Burkley, were destroyed. The reasons given for the destructions never made any sense. It was supposedly to protect the president's privacy or not to embarrass the public because some of the papers were covered with blood. Somewhat very adolescent excuses for a major responsible job. We may never know what those records contained, but the fact that there is evidence that they were destroyed are enough to disqualify this autopsy as an acceptable one with medical standards. Thirdly, an anatomical impossibility. According to Dr. Humes, there was an entry wound in the back of the president, some 6 inches below the collarbone, and then this entry wound would lead to an exit wound through the throat, but anatomically a bullet coming from 6 floors high and striking the president in the back 6 inches below the collar will not be able to exit through the Adam's apple, unless, of course, there was a directional and forceful force forcing the bullet to move upward after moving downward. In summary, what is the main conclusion of the autopsy? The autopsy report says 3 bullets killed the president, and most likely they matched the Mannlicher Carcano, and it confirmed that Lee Harvey Oswald was the lone assassin. In view of the inconsistencies and scientific unreliability of the autopsy, I conclude the autopsy of President Kennedy is a sham and has no scientific reliability. Thank you for watching the first edition of Salerian Brain, dedicated to JFK assassination and a post-mortem exam.